yeah, baby. I love the sound of that groove. Speaking of Eastern Europe, this theme song that we use was written for me by a kid from Romania. Yep. And it's actually a great song. I've emailed it to a couple of listeners who have asked me for it. I've narrowed it down and kind of trimmed it down, and it only runs for a minute here, but it's actually about a 5-minute song, and it's really slick because the kid who wrote it, it just weaves in and out, and it's just a great song. Anyway, if anybody would like it, you can call me about it. It's called Ziggurat. I don't know why he called it that, and he gave me permission to copyright it so we could use it for the theme song. And I've modified it a little bit, so I have it copyrighted, and I like it. And if it's not your kind of music, that's too bad. This is my show. So anyway, we just, touched on 3 other topics this morning. Our own internal threats from agencies and groups like the BLM, our own federal agencies like the IRS. And by the way, if you guys are not cognizant of it, let me just put you on notice that the IRS, and this is news this morning, and it's posted up on our Facebook and website and blah, 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 blah. They awarded millions of dollars in bonuses to 1,100 employees of the IRS, and 1,100 of them who got a bonus owed back taxes. I kid you not. I mean, this is beyond unreasonable. It's insulting. The IRS only has one function, and that is the collection of taxes, and they cannot seem to even collect the taxes from their own employees. And then, to compound it and pour salt in a gunshot wound, they actually have the nerve to give them bonuses and not withhold the back taxes from the bonus. It's like a Kafka novel. I mean, this is almost like I could imagine like a writer who writes, tragic comedy would create and make this up as a script. But I actually know better. In fact, I think they actually stole this entire plot that they're rolling out for us as the script from Atlas Shrugged. And they're acting it out. I mean, I kid you not. I think somebody sits there in the Oval Office with Odumbo, and they go through that book and say, how do we implement this? I mean, where are we going to find some extra looters? I mean, it's just incredible. You can't make this stuff up, folks. I want to talk about and bring this one up to you, too. There's another computer glitch. How convenient. Golly gee, who'd have thunk? And this one is a tech meltdown that's crippling the ability to deport those pesky illegals. Well, what do you know about that? Just in time to, wait for Obama and Odumbo and his little jackbooted thug from the Department of Justice, Eric the Traitor Holder, to figure out a way to bypass the rule of law and create their own little fantasy world of free immigration for all. Here's their argument. 5 servers all went down and quit at the same time. Coming from a tech background, I got to tell you, that's extraordinarily unlikely on an astronomical level. Okay? And next issue was, they say it's going to take 2 weeks to get the parts. Now, I don't know about you, but there is not any, unless they're going to deliver them by Pony Express, there is no server that will take 2 weeks to get parts. And why don't you have backup parts available for them? Number 3, why don't you have backups of the data on a standby set of servers? Because the idea of hot standby failover in the IT world is as old as IT. It's been around since computing began. So they're letting people go. Well, would you just look at that? 5 servers, and the courts can't run. They're they're doing it manually on paper and pen. I kid you not. This is the same group, by the way, that wants to keep all your data. I mean, if I didn't think that this was planned, I would be relieved. Because that would mean that, that gigantic hard drive they built out in Utah is probably likely to fail anyway. But I believe that there's more to this than meets the eye. This kind of stuff, folks, another news article before I get into this issue on U.S. boots on the ground in Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia, is that we just found a brand new posting for 5 million slug and buckshot rounds to be sold per year to Customs and Border Protection. Yeah. A 20 million round order. Now, I mean, if this was intended to protect our borders from invaders, I would probably breathe a sigh of relief. The problem is, I suspect that it's just another way to cover up a large ammo order that will be redistributed to wherever it needs to go. And I have no illusions, and I'm operating under no delusions, that it might actually be used to protect and defend our nation from outsiders. In fact, I believe that the real purpose of 20 million rounds of buckshot is not to defend us from outsiders, but to actually subjugate the insiders. That would be the pesky citizens like you and me. Hello. See, all these people talking about, why do all these departments need ammunition? What does the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration need ammunition for? And why does the Department of Education need ammo? They don't. But if they just went out there and bought 20 billion rounds of ammunition under the federal government's name under Department of Homeland Security, red flags would be flying on the play like confetti in the field after the Super Bowl. So what they do is they have a bunch of these little agencies go out there and buy these small blocks of ammo. When they come in, they just redistribute it. Hello? There is this thing called FedEx and, UPS, which of course works better than the Postal Service, which they own. What the heck. Talk about an upside down world, folks. All right, let's get into our topic here, which I don't want to miss it. The problem that we have is we're now sending troops to Poland, and we're sending them to Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Now, if you've looked at a map recently, and you've even contemplated taking a look at a map of Ukraine, and I happen to like maps, I spend an enormous amount of time looking at maps, just out of general curiosity. I've always loved them. When I was a kid, we didn't have a TV in my house, and we had this gigantic world atlas, one of them big old dogs, right? The kind that was like a coffee table book, but it was almost the size of the coffee table. And I would open that thing up, and I would lay on the floor, and I would look at individual countries, and I'd look at, at cities marked on the map, or I'd look at the height of mountains, and I'd go to Mount Everest in Nepal, and I'd look at the heights of the peaks and things like that, and I dream about, could I get there, and how cool would that be? I was a kid, and I have always liked maps, and so I'm fairly good with geography. If you would ask me a country and spin the globe, I could probably pinpoint it fairly quickly, with a few exceptions. By the way, that's a lost art in America. Ask any kid on the street. Bring a globe onto the street and do this little test yourself. Go into a crowded mall and bring a globe with you. And take a list of 10 or 20 countries. Not the obvious ones, right? But even the obvious ones. I mean, ask them where England is and have them find it for you on a globe. I guarantee you that 60% of the people will not be able to find England. I kid you not. Try it for yourself. And then have somebody else videotape it for you so that you can upload it to YouTube. In fact, upload it to me first, and then I'll upload it to YouTube. But if you've looked at a map, you know that Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland are border countries to the west of Ukraine. To the east of Ukraine is Russia. So now, on the very southern tip of the Ukraine is Crimea, and that's already gone to the Russians, and it has no connection to Russia, by the way, I might add, other than through the southeastern portion of Ukraine. And so that's why you keep hearing all of this talk about how Russia wants the eastern portion of the Ukraine, because Crimea is locked away and separate from the parent country now of Russia. And there's an enormous amount of resources that are on the eastern half of the Ukraine. Anyway, I don't think anyone who's intellectually honest about this issue is looking at the Ukraine and saying, Russia's going to stop with Crimea. They're not. And they're going to go after the eastern half or maybe all of the Ukraine, under whatever justification Vladimir can draw up. There's no denying that. That's why, that is the reason Poland is shaking in its boots. That is the reason that Lithuania and Estonia and Latvia are nervous, because they're just to the west. And they see, and first of all, recognize that, you know, those countries already lived under Russia once before, under Russia once before in the USSR. And, you know, Poland is just tired of everybody invades Poland. And here's the problem. They're NATO allies. Now, that means that, you know, if Poland were to be invaded, as a NATO ally, we are obligated, you know, an attack on one is an attack on all, right? The only problem is that, you know, we make up the vast majority of NATO. I mean, everybody, there's other countries, but, you know, let's be honest. Cooperation from them is limited, shall we say, as we saw in Afghanistan and Iraq and, you know, every other place we've been over the last 20, 30 years. The truth is that, you know, we're sending 150 soldiers over there, and they're going to be arriving in Poland. Now, they're going over there, you know, ostensibly for exercises. But, you know, if you believe that, then, I've got some oceanfront property in the middle of St. Louis that is perfect for you. It's the perfect vacation spot for you. And I'm going to sell it to you cheap. I mean, you know, this is not about the United States going over there to run exercises. This is about going over there to show, you know, put a show of strength out there to Putin, to make him double think his positioning as to whether or not he wants to tackle the remainder of the Ukraine and or expand beyond that. And the problem is that this is beginning to look like a slow fuse version of World War I. And a lot of it is engendered based on the fact that we are doing the same appeasement that Neville Chamberlain did back in World War II. And we are seeing the same levels of, you know, this constant refrain of, well, they're going to stop after they take that, and, you know, there's not much we can do about it. I agree, by the way. There isn't much we can do about it. I mean, short of going and jumping into a full-fledged war, which no American wants, Putin has, you know, weaseled his way in there, and there's nothing we can do about it. I do believe that there are some things that we can do that are less overt. But the biggest problem that we've got is that this isn't really about the Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, folks. What this really is about is the IMF and the EU, who want to get a hold of Ukraine for its natural resources, and while they're at it, you know, to poke Putin in the eye with a sharp stick. The problem is that the nation of the Ukraine and the Ukrainian people are being caught up in the middle of a game that's much bigger than they are. And they're being used as a pawn, and a pawn that's expendable as far as the EU and the IMF and the United States and Russia. In other words, they're expendable to every one of the entities that's involved. Nobody really cares about the Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. It's just a piece it's just a chip on the board. That's what it is. what bothers me about this is that, the president has allowed Putin to outmaneuver him in this based on his, ridiculous assertion that, well, Putin's acting like an 18th century Cossack. Of course he is. He is an 18th century Cossack, you idiot. Odumbo's sitting there trying to figure out, why would he think that way? Well, because you're the only one living in the la-la fantasy utopian, unicorn flatulence aerated world that you have created for yourself. The truth of the matter is, you've been so busy trying to figure out how to destroy the United States from inside that you thought nobody else was as creative or as slick or as fancy as you. I tell you what. Of all times, of all places, of all people, and of all nations for us to get into trouble with right now, which is Russia and China, to have Barack Insane Obama at the helm scares the poop out of me. And it should scare you too. Because, one, he's not an honest broker. He's not an honest broker for our nation. He's not an honest broker because he's got his, he's busy trying. He's like, any one of these little third world tin pot dictators that takes over the Congo or, something like that. And they're not interested in conquering additional territory outside their own country. They're just happy to slaughter their own people. No, I know we're not slaughtering Americans in the United States yet. And but I got to tell you, folks, that's what it's coming to, complete total subjugation. And when you stand up, you'll find that that's going to be the end result, that this government is sure, they'll avoid slaughtering you if possible, as long as you kowtow. But if you stop, if you stop bowing when you're told to bow, if you stop kneeling when you're told to kneel, then you'll find yourself standing there with your head looking up at your body, which is still standing there. That's the way it's going to work. And this buffoon is a dangerous man because, his plan is not dovetailing in well with Vladimir Putin's plan. And it's not dovetailing in well with China's plan. They've got their own agendas. And frankly, they're distracting him from his. He's not an honest broker. That's the problem. He's not an honest broker for our nation. He's not an honest broker for the world. He's not an honest broker for the only, real superpower out there. And we're stuck with him. There's about 600 of our soldiers that are going to go to these four disparate countries in Eastern Europe, ostensibly for military exercises. Almost every foreign conflict we've gotten into starts this way. Well, they're advisors. Anybody remember this thing called the Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam? Does anybody remember this thing called Korea? I recognize that for the Ukrainian people, they're caught in a pincer. And it's unfortunate. Their own government, the puppet government instituted by Russia, was betraying them. The fascist government that's trying to control things now is betraying them. They can't turn to the IMF because they're just trying to bleed them dry. They can't turn to the EU because to turn to the EU, they got to tie themselves to the IMF, which is, again, trying to bleed them dry. They can't turn to the U.S. because, we're so whipped, and you can insert prior word before that. We're so whipped that we're not willing to help them. And even if we did, it would come with strings that is, fall suspiciously in line with the EU and the IMF. So the only losers here are going to be the Ukrainian people. You know, the power players at the top, whether they're the fascist, Ukrainian government, the few true Ukrainian patriots who want some kind of a limited, constitutional government, or it's the Russian forces that are, seeking to undermine the whole thing. The only people who are going to lose here are the rank and file citizens of the Ukraine. That's the truth. Some of those other people may lose their heads in the process, but the truth is the only people here who are going to ultimately lose, and lose big time, are the Ukrainian citizens. This kind of presence that we're going to create over there could have been avoided had our government done the right thing in the first place, which was to make sure that Vladimir Putin didn't think he had this as an option. And my fear is that it's too little, too late, and it's misdirected as it's a bad shot. Instead of aiming the gun and holding it correctly and pointing it, they're just spraying. The problem is that with that kind of mentality, we're likely to get dragged into a conflict that may be far greater and far more dangerous for us than we would care to contemplate. And of all times, of all people to have at the helm now, Barack Obama and his clan of sycophants and bullies and terrorist wannabes, tyrant wannabes. Man, oh man, oh man. I tell you, it scares me for the future of our nation and for the future of our youth. Because, Barack is not going to saddle up and run over there with an M4 under his or slung over his back. They will. And frankly, we don't need to be embroiled in another war, nor to leave our flank exposed for China. All right, we're going to wrap for the day, folks. Thanks very much for joining with us. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. Please feel free to write me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. You're certainly welcome to give us your feedback and input. If you'd like, if you like this topic and you like the show that we do, please tell me. If you don't like it, tell me. Be gentle, but tell me. And if you want to support us, please do so. You can go to our website at americasvoicenow.org, and you can use a PayPal link over there. It's you can make a donation one time or monthly, and if you'd like to mail it to us, you can certainly use the Postal Service to accomplish that. You can mail it to America's Voice Now, P.O. Box 1195 in West Plains, Missouri, 65775. That's America's Voice Now, P.O. Box 1195, West Plains, Missouri, 65775. God bless you. Thanks. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.